Esteemed Speaker of the Day, Professor Deepti Gupta. Respected Dean, Academic Affairs, Professor Ramakrishna Vusirika. Respected colleagues from the Central University of Punjab, colleagues from other institutions, dear research scholars and students of the university, a very good afternoon to everyone. I thank you for joining us for today's expert lecture on academic writing. My colleagues and I welcome you to the first lecture in this series that Professor Deepti Gupta has graciously agreed to deliver. Through this series, ma'am has agreed to enlighten us on different aspects of professional and academic communication in English. Whereas the first lecture, that is today's lecture, focuses on academic writing, the second lecture in the series on February 17th will guide students of English on career paths after MA English. The third and the last in the series on February 24th will focus on language hygiene. Today's session is on academic writing, an aspect of our academic life that we often love and loathe in equal measure. As most academic writing in India is carried out in English, and English being a second, third, and often a fourth language to most of us, we frequently find ourselves struggling with it during academic communication. I hope through today's session, we will be able to understand the process of academic writing better and also learn some useful strategies to gain better proficiency in it. To begin with, I will request Professor Vusirika to kindly inaugurate the lecture series formally and say a few words. Sir.
I'd like to welcome Professor Deepti Gupta for this very important series of seminars and starting with academic writing. And good afternoon to all the participants here. So this is a very important topic because I have seen a lot of students, even though they are studying, say, from English medium school, there is a lot of deficiency in academic writing, and it is very poor many a times. And when we come to science, we write a lot of papers, say publications and all. There again, it is very important. These writing skills are very important, and the way sentence structures have a problem, grammatical mistakes, and so many of these issues we see every day with students. So I am looking forward that this seminar and the series that the Department of English has organized will actually help a lot of students, and I am hoping this seminar will be recorded and it can be used for sharing with all other students of the university, whether they are first semester or third or fourth semester. So this is a very timely topic we have at this particular time, and also the time of the semester. This is coming. I think it's very good, and we all look forward to this exciting seminar series, starting with Professor Deepti Gupta. So I would like to welcome you again, and I will hand over to Professor Deepti. Dr. Shahila, your mic.
I would like to invite Dr. Prithvi Raj to introduce Professor Deepti Gupta formally. Sir.
This is indeed an honor, if you can hear me, to introduce Professor Deepti Gupta. Our distinguished speaker, Professor Deepti Gupta, is a professor and former chairperson of the Department of English and Culture Studies, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Professor Gupta is also Dean Alumni Relations and has been the Dean International Students at Punjab University, Chandigarh. Professor Gupta specializes in applied linguistics and stylistics and has more than 35 years teaching and research experience in the field. Ma'am has an MA in English Literature and Linguistics, an MPhil in Stylistics, and a PhD in English Language Teaching, and has published 3 books on English language and literature with Oxford University Press and Palgrave Macmillan, in addition to multiple research papers and reviews in reputed journals and publishers like Asian EFL Journal, IATEFL Issues, and Tyler and Francis. Apart from her just mentioned active academic life, ma'am authored a fortnightly column on etymology titled Roots for the Tribune, Chandigarh for more than 15 years. Ma'am has been an active speaker and trainer and has conducted more than 100 workshops on topics ranging from ELT to effective communication to corporate training at different institutes and organizations across India. She has been a resource person for various workshops on different aspects of English language learning, teaching, and research conducted by the Regional English Language Office, the British Council, and English Language Teachers Association of India and ITP. Ma'am, we all welcome you, and we students and teachers alike are excited to learn from you.
Thank you, Dr. Prithviraj. Ma'am, please.
Thank you very much for the warm words of welcome. I'd like to thank Professor Musirika for his warm welcome and Dr. Prithviraj for his wonderful introduction. You know, this is why I enjoy these lectures. You hear so many good things about yourself. And a big thank you to Dr. Shanila for being so patient with me. And we've been in touch, I think, for more than 2 months now. She's been patiently writing out my busy spots and waiting for the topics, etc., etc. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to your university. And we'll just be chatting a little about academic writing, what it is, why we need it. First of all, there's no need to fear academic writing. This is the tool of your student life. So, have you ever seen a baker being afraid of an oven? Or have you seen an automobile manufacturer scared of the automobile? Or have you seen your own mother afraid of fire when she's cooking for you? So similarly, academic writing is our tool, and that is how it works. Without writing academically, we would not be able to express ourselves, and we cannot make a place in the professional world for ourselves. When you go to a party, you obviously don't go in a night suit. So then why would you want to use the language of everyday life when you answer a question paper, or when you write an assignment, or when you write a thesis? It's as simple as that. You need to write in a certain style, and if you have opted for English as the language of your academic life, obviously that how does a teacher convey to her students the importance of academic writing? You know, let's put it this way. We've got so many varieties of a language floating around. If you look at English itself, there is the English that you use on WhatsApp. There is the English that you use on emails. There is the English that you use with your classmates, the English that you use with your teachers, and then there is the English that you use in your assignments, your answer sheets, your thesis, so on and so forth. So, in a multilingual country like ours, we are proud of being multilingual, but at the same time, it becomes our duty to understand which language we are using for what purpose. And as teachers, it is our duty to convey to you, my dear student, if you have entered the academic life, then it's your duty to make sure that the tools of your profession are properly owned and properly maintained. So writing in the academic mode is the main tool of your profession. There's no need to be afraid of it. It's not like a dragon that's going to swallow you up or a ghost that's going to haunt you. The only thing you need to do is you need to master it and be sure that you know the nitty-gritties of it. That's all we are asking you to do. And how are you going to do that? By using writing in the academic mode more and more, by turning to your teachers for feedback, and by making sure that you know the format that is required. Because naturally, every piece of writing that we do, even if it is a WhatsApp message to a group of friends, there is going to be a certain way of writing it. You're not going to write a shopping list as if you're writing an answer to a question. So, how do you write an answer to a question as a shopping list? You can't, obviously, because then it would have lost its functional utility. So, you've got to remember that there is a certain way of writing academically, and it's that style that you've got to master. It's as simple as that. I don't think there's anything problematic about it. I don't think there's anything that should trouble you. So if you look at academic writing, nobody wants a lot of embroidery, nobody wants decoration. All you need to do is begin at the beginning, go on till you come to the end, and you stop. It's very, very simple. That is all you need to do. Also remember that there is a difference between personal writing and academic writing. Personal writing can be emotional. Academic writing will always be logical. Personal writing can depend on your intuition. But in academic writing, you will use reasoning and logic. Personal writing may be in the active voice. Many times you say, I find that, I feel that. But in academic writing, by and large, we prefer passive voice. Because academic writing is supposed to be an objective account, as opposed to personal writing that is subjective. Also, you may use anecdotes and stories in personal writing, but in academic writing, we tend to look for evidence. The data is only from one person in personal writing, that is you or maybe your friend. Academic writing has a wider database. Why? Because you are talking about books that have been published, or you're talking about a research study. So obviously, it has a wider database for taking material from. And personal writing can be tangential, there may be tangents. Academic writing will never be tangential. It will keep to a logical sequence from point A to point B to point C to point D. You know, for academic writing, you write the way you talk. What is academic writing? If you are writing an answer in an examination, that's academic writing. If you are writing a research paper, that's academic writing. If you're writing an assignment, that's academic writing. A PhD thesis is academic writing. An MPhil dissertation is academic writing. So the very first rule is write the way you talk and then polish it. By polishing, I mean make it objective rather than subjective. So those of you who are from the sciences or physics will identify with what's written here. The square of the autocorrelation function of an etched enhanced image of a manufactured object was obtained by generating a Fourier transform hologram in a converging beam optical correlator using a liquid crystal display video monitor addressed by a charge coupled device video camera, which has good rectilinearity. Can anyone tell me what this means? Anyone from physics? Do we have any researcher from physics? Okay. Now, look at this. This is how it should have been written. The purpose of the experiment was to recognize a manufactured object optically. Compare this to the earlier. And you will realize that there was too much of jargon in the earlier one. It was one long, breathless sentence, and there were too many technical words. Here, we are going step by step. We have eliminated some of the technical words and made it readable. So you've got to remember that academic writing does not mean very long, complex sentences. The purpose is not to lose the reader. The purpose is to give the reader a clear picture. Now, what was written earlier did not give a clear picture. This gives a clear picture. The trouble is that mostly people feel that they cannot respect words that they understand. They feel that a person who is understood is not a scholar. I'm sorry to say, this is a total falsehood. Remember, all communication is a two-way process. If you say, I've conveyed the information, you've not done your job. You've done your job when you get feedback from your listener that yes, this is what you wanted to say to me. This is what I've conveyed. And the feedback coming back to you makes it a two-way process. So many times when scholars come and say, ma'am, my paper got rejected, this is the first question I ask them. Suppose you were to read this paper as a stranger, would you understand it? So remember, all communication is a two-way process. You cannot write in a vacuum. You have to keep your audience in mind. Who are you writing for? Who is at the other end? A teacher does this all the time, keeping the level of the learners in mind. So, if you are writing a research paper, keep your expert in mind. Who is the expert who will be reading your paper? In case you don't know, imagine somebody. Because that helps in communication. And remember, a scientific experiment is complete only after the results have been published and they have been understood. Otherwise, the scientific experiment is not complete. So if you are sitting in your lab and comfortably doing your work, you haven't completed your work until you've published what you did, until people have grasped what you did. So learn to communicate the best sense in the fewest words. That's the bottom line. Academic writing doesn't mean thousands of words for a document. It means being able to convey the best sense in the fewest words. Rule number 2, write one thought a sentence. If you have one thought in mind, complete it, give a full stop or a semicolon, or a comma, whatever you feel. Maybe after the semicolon or comma, if there is a related thought, you can add it. But the golden rule is that don't add too many thoughts to one's sentence. This is the age-long formula for writing an abstract in academic writing, IMRAD, which means introduction, methods, results, discussion. Of course, this would also be the template of a research paper that you write. But if you're writing an abstract, remember it would be between 150 to 250 words, depending upon what the specifications are. And it must cover IMRD. Otherwise, it's not complete. What was studied? How was it studied? What were the findings? What do the findings mean? So whether it's a synopsis or an abstract of a thesis or a research paper, it must have these components. The only difference is that in a synopsis they'll be longer, for an abstract they'll be shorter. Remember that without publication, research is dead, which is why we need academic writing. Because your research results must reach your peer group. People who are your contemporaries, they must see your original research results. Also, experiments can be repeated by people based on your guidelines, and the conclusions that you drew from your research can be tested. So documents must be readily available. If somebody wants to repeat your experiment, they must be able to consult your research paper and set up a similar experiment. Which is why, friends, if you don't publish, there's no purpose to your research. Also, academic writing, there's no space for obscurity, no space for extra words. The title should be very clear, but not like this one, mammals, which is totally generic, general in nature, confusing, and it completely lacks any indication of the research area. Whether it's a research paper or a thesis or a dissertation, give a lot of thought to the title. Make sure the title is loud and clear because a title is like a label for a product. When you go to a shop and you want to buy something, you look at the label of products. When you go to a library, you want to read a book, you look at the title, and then you decide, this is what I'm going to read. So the title is like the label of a product. Also, give the right keywords in the title. Suppose you're doing a study on, say, the fool in Shakespeare. Now, suppose a person wanted to search for articles on the fool in Shakespeare. There are so many aspects to the fool. If the person types fool and Shakespeare, there would be thousands of entries. What is so specific about your study? The fool in Shakespeare, colon, the language of Shakespeare's fool, thing like that, or Shahla, are the slides displaying properly?
Ma'am, we can see the slides. If you can please put them in presentation mode, that would be better, ma'am. Thank you.
They are in presentation mode.
I mean, it's getting presented, but the full screen maybe.
The full screen is not coming in.
No.
Okay, so I'll just stop share for a moment
Also, I can see only one slide since the big.
and modify.
Okay.
Just go to full screen. Okay, can you now see the full screen? Shahla?
We can only see a Google Meet screen,
There's
not the slides.
There's no network issue as well that says that my network is slow. It's preventing me from sharing the full screen. Highlights not allowing me to share the full screen.
Ma'am, if you can just click on the slides, I think it will be all right. I mean, it was getting presented.
It is getting presented, but it's not allowing me to present full screen. It's allowing me to share a window.
Ma'am, within the slides, if you go to presentation mode,
Yeah, that I've done.
and that's all.
That I have done. That's what I was doing earlier. Now check.
Let me see one slide and the other slides on the side. So if you can present from the current slide.
That's exactly why I am in the presentation mode now.
Okay.
But Google Meet is not allowing me to expand to full screen.
Then it's all right, ma'am. I think we can work with this. It's visible anyway.
You get the point?
And it.
Because at my end, this is full screen, but Google Meet, then it reduces to a window. Okay,
All right, ma'am. This is all right, ma'am.
so should I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So you see, that is the importance of a clear title. For example, when you say The Fool in Shakespeare, a study of language, or you say a stylistic study of the Fool in Shakespeare, or maybe the urban landscape of Punjab. Now, if you just say urban landscape of Punjab, that doesn't help you because there would be thousands of papers with the same title. So you've got to give the aspect that you are studying. The urban landscape of Punjab, colon, a study of wastewater management. That makes and it gives the right keywords. The most important aspect to understand for academic writing is that what you are writing today may be written for a specific limited purpose. But at some point or the other, it becomes a public document, and perhaps it also becomes a document that you may need for accreditation or some kind of evaluation, or maybe getting into some project, or perhaps you've submitted your CV somewhere, you've given a reference of your publications, the person wants to check your publication online. So the person who is checking must get the right picture, which is why the title should hold the right keywords. And remember, if it's a running title, then you can't have a lengthy running title. Many times, the running title means that every page of the document, every page of your academic document will carry the running title. So the running title will obviously be something very crisp and something very clear cut. You can even reduce your original title and make a shorter running title. And most important, avoid jargon. Even academic paper, if the title has too much of jargon, you can often put off readers. Avoid jargon and avoid wasting words. You don't need words that are not required. Also, if you are writing, say, a research paper which has multiple authors, you'll have to create the list with a lot of care, because there is no clear convention. Nothing tells you that it's in alphabetical order or the years of seniority. Sometimes the seniority principle works. But obviously, if you are submitting a paper to some agency that is not familiar with your local situation, then the seniority principle may not even work. Sometimes it is the amount of work that people have done on a paper. Obviously, the person who's done the maximum work becomes the first. Just remember that when you're going to get credit for your research paper, it is the first author who gets most of the credit. So always list your authors with care. Give the clear addresses, whether it's email or postal address. And remember that only one person should be the communicating author. The others cannot be the communicating authors, because in that case, it will be nobody's baby. The publishers or the reviewers or the editors will need to be loud and clear. In between, you can see there are some exercises that I had added for academic writing. Obviously, we don't have the time to do them today. So I'm going to share this presentation with Dr. Shahla. And if she likes, she's welcome to share it with those of you who want to polish up. And you can do these tasks that I have put in. So rule number 6 is that the abstract is a mini version of the paper. And if the abstract is to appear before a research paper, it is usually a single paragraph. Now, I'm not talking about the abstract that you write for your thesis, that appears before your thesis. That abstract can be paragraphs, but if it is an abstract that appears before your research paper, it will be a single paragraph. And it will be max 250 words. And remember that principle I told you about, IMRAD, got to remember this for the abstract, along with the other pointers that I'm giving you. You've got to state the principal objectives and the scope of the paper, methodology, summarize the results, and give the principal conclusions. This is what the abstract must carry. Also, the abstract is in the past tense. The reason for that being that usually a research paper is an account of work that has been done. So obviously, it will be in the past tense. The American National Standards essentially defines the abstract. A well-prepared abstract enables readers to identify the basic content of a document quickly and accurately, to determine its relevance to their interests, and thus to decide whether they need to read the document in its entirety. So the abstract is like a test, where your research is being tested for its relevance. If you want to read your paper, that means your abstract managed to sell your paper. So as I told you, it's all about marketing your research. If you are a poor academic writer, obviously you cannot be good at marketing your research. So if you want to succeed at marketing, then you've got to know academic writing. And remember to ask the question, will the abstract be used as a heading? You know, there are many ways in which abstracts are used. Of course, in a thesis, it's put in the beginning so that anyone who picks up the thesis can understand what it carries. In a research paper, in a journal, usually the abstract is the first part of your article. It appears before your article. Many times it's as a heading, it's a header for your paper. And many times in conferences, the abstract is a part of the conference booklet. Now there the abstract will obviously need to be just one paragraph. And also remember, when you send an article for publication, reviewers are always given the abstract first. They are asked to read the abstract and then decide whether they want to review the paper or not. So be very abstract, because it is going to come first wherever it's concerned. If you can manage in fewer words, don't use more words, which is why I say write it well in time, so that you have lots of time to revise it. You will need to revise it at least 3 or 4 times, because that is how language is polished up. Remember, to your academic piece of writing will have to be a well-begun introduction. You know, as Euripides says, a bad beginning makes a bad ending. The introduction should present the problem clearly. It should give the review of the pertinent literature, give the method of investigation, describe the principal results, also give the main conclusions, and define any specialized terms or abbreviations you will. Usually, when people write an academic document, they have some specialized terms and abbreviations that they require. Shahila, are the slides moving now?
No, ma'am. We are at slide number 2. We don't see
God. Shahila, I think this is a network problem. Should I send you the presentation?
That will be all right, ma'am.
Maybe it will run.
Possibly.
Yeah, maybe it will run. Maybe it will run better from your end. I'll just email it to you,
Sure, ma'am, please.
and you can. Shaila, have you received?
Yes, ma'am, I have received it. I'll present it right away.
Yeah, that will be better. There seems to be some network problem. You need to go to the 17th slide.
हाँ जी मैम.
17, 17.
Is that all right, ma'am?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Technology. Okay. So when you begin, whether it's a thesis or a research paper or a dissertation, these are the main contexts in which we use academic writing. Make sure that your introduction presents, review the pertinent literature, clearly state the method of investigation, and describe the principal results. Also, give the main conclusions and define any specialized terms or abbreviations you intend to use. So, this is how you should begin. Of course, depending on your topic, for example, if it is a scientific study where you still have to do some experimentation and you don't want to illusions early, you can withhold. I'm just giving you the general template. This is how you should begin a piece of academic writing. Shahla, next slide, please. Next slide, please, Shahla. That would be number 18. Remember that where the materials and methods are concerned, especially in the sciences, your results must be reproducible. And of course, in the languages, when we are analyzing language using some specific, some kind of specific methodology or template or any kind of pattern, we have to be very careful that we clearly give the full details. You see, the idea is that your results must be reproducible. Only then will your research have the credibility that it should have. Remember, you'll be writing in the past tense because you've already done your research. And remember that reviewers always pay attention to the materials and methods used, even if it is a study of literature. What are your primary secondary sources? What kind of methodology are you using? Include the specific details of all materials. If it is books, you must have the proper edition, proper page number, date of publication, place of publication, edition. And if it is scientific materials, then the paper or thesis or dissertation must carry the brand, the size you get it from, so that if somebody wants to replicate your research, they can easily do it. Also, try to follow a very straight chronological order so that your reader doesn't get lost. Shaila, next slide, please. All through your academic writing, make sure you use subheadings, because subheadings give system to a document. Many times we get lazy. Oh, who's going to write all? So one very convenient way of doing it is that you just write your document all through first and then give it the subheadings so that there is a consistency. It should not be a mix and match kind of affair, where in some places you're using alphabets and in some places you're using Romans or you're using straight numbers. So make sure there is a consistency. Also, state the measurements and processes very precisely. Really important where you're doing quantitative research, because most research is lacking. Language is a combination of qualitative and quantitative. But scientific studies and the social sciences often have research that is purely quantitative. So make sure you state all the processes and measurements. Keep in mind the principle that research is not research till it is published and till it is replicated. I'll be going on to plagiarism after this. So you are clear why citing is important. Use tables for clarity. Use the opinion of your peers. If you have fellow researchers, give them your work to read. Take feedback from them. Take feedback from your teachers. Edit for language. If you feel that your language editing is faulty, look for a friend with the language or request a teacher and take detailed feedback. Track the changes that they make. And you are going to omit the results for the present when you're writing, because the results either appear in the abstract or they appear in the discussion in the end. Usually in a thesis or a dissertation, you don't give the results in the letters. Shaila, next please. So remember, the fool collects facts and the wise man selects them. Make sure you choose the right facts. Remember that your result section is important because it's giving the big picture of materials and methods. Since it's presenting the data collected, then it's possible for the examiner and the researcher both. What did you collect and how? And avoid repetition in the results section. Make sure you use meaningful statistics, not like the one given here in the example. This is a real life example. 33 1/3 of the mice used in this experiment were cured, 33 1/3 were unaffected, and the third ran away. Now, why did you want to write third? Why don't you write 33 1/3 again? Why are you the drawback of your research yourself? Next slide, please. So what is the advice for academic writing? The overall advice is use the source materials. Use source materials means if you have primary sources that you've depended upon, or even if they are secondary sources, make sure you use them and you cite them. Without citation, you are a plagiarist. Compare and contrast wherever you can. Wherever you can make comparisons. Say, for example, you're talking about some Indian writers and some Canadian writers. Make sure you compare and contrast. State the criteria that you have used for any kind of evaluation. State that criteria and you show an awareness of complexity. Academic writing. It's good to be aware of complexities. It's good to put them up front. Follow an argument. Make sure your argument is clear. I'm going to begin at this point of time and I'm going to end at this point of time. Whatever you are writing. Also, make a decision. Be very sure. I'm going to write this piece, such journal, and this is what I want to see. There should be perfect clarity. Have a structure in mind and follow it. Be discursive means be prepared to argue about your writing. Be prepared to justify, but not by getting emotionally fired up, but by being emotionally neutral, by being conscious of topic sentences, and by picturing the reader. How am I going to convince the reader? So these are the aspects that, if taken care of, will give you a good piece of academic writing. Next slide, please. Now, plagiarism is emerging as a very big concern these days. And sometimes I feel very sad for students who get caught in the net simply because they did not pay. Friends, if you are borrowing an idea from someone, what is the harm in acknowledging it? It really doesn't matter as compared to the damage that will happen if you don't acknowledge. So make sure you cite your source. When you cite your source, make sure you follow the academic style. That is the full name, the date of publication, any other citation element that's required. Also, include quotations. If you are using another person's words, what is the harm in putting it within inverted commas? Acknowledge the fact that you used. Tomorrow, somebody may use your words and forget to tell you about it. How would you feel about it then? Next, please. There's a very simple way of avoiding plagiarism. You can reformat what has been written, use paraphrase, use your own language. But remember, you will still need to give the name of the book you consulted in the bibliography. Paraphrasing simply means that you don't put the words commas, you have the gist of the words in your work, and you have the name of the author in your citations. Next, please. So, learn to present your own ideas. Learn to value your judgment as a researcher. And remember that even if you are talking about a person's ideas in your own language, you will still need to acknowledge that you read what the person is writing. And remember, when you have put a paper through the anti-plagiarism check and you come back with the same paper for another publication, you're going to get trapped because the software remembers your the moment it reads it, it's reminded that this is something which the software has read. So even if you want to recycle your previous works, do it intelligently. Otherwise, you will be accused of self-plagiarism. Next, please. So while you are conducting your research on a topic, you will find that there are sentences that stick, and which is why the online plagiarism check is very important. I've given you just 2 examples, but there are others. There's no harm in checking. You don't lose anything if you check, but you lose a lot if you are accused of plagiarism. So make sure that you put whatever you write through a plagiarism check. Most universities these days software in place where you can go and next please. You can move on. These are the exercises I had referred to. So how do you avoid plagiarism? Remember, plagiarism is like theft, friends. You are stealing the ideas of someone. So take a pledge to attribute references. Yes, I am going to acknowledge. I am going to acknowledge whatever I take from someone else. For this purpose, I would suggest that maintain a file on your desktop in which you put in all the information of the books you consult. Even if it's a book that you consulted for 5 minutes in the library, there's having a long list of references. But there is every problem in not displaying a reference. Many times after you've consulted a book, you realize, oh, I need to go back to it. But when you go back, it's either issued to somebody or it's damaged or you can't find it. So it's a good idea to maintain a list of references side by side with your research and describe all the sources of it, whether it's a blog or a website or an online article, and acknowledge, give acknowledgement. Put yourselves in the shoes of the author. How would you feel if somebody quoted your work without acknowledging? And remember, if the format permits, you can provide footnotes or you can use endnotes. Remember, in research articles, the more footnotes and the more scholarly is the article thought to be, because footnote and notes show the depth of your reading. So if you have something to explain or something that you feel will disturb the tempo of your text, you can put it in a footnote or an endnote. Use quotation marks wherever required. Don't be shy of using quotation marks. And if you are using very extensive quotations, then you make permission from the publisher or the copyright. Otherwise, avoid very lengthy quotations. Whatever style sheet you use, it gives you all these details. And remember, scientific and historical facts that are generally common knowledge, they don't require citation. Also, avoid self-plagiarism. Say you have published an article in a journal and to use that same article in another journal. The moment you go for a plagiarism check, you will be accused of self-plagiarism. So make sure that you put in a small note that says that this is a revised form, or this is the current version of an article that was earlier published with such and such journal under such and such name. Next slide. So when you are sending a research paper to a journal, you actually need to go backwards. You know, what do most of us do? We write the paper and then we start looking for a journal. The better approach is that you look for a journal, check out the submission guidelines, and then start writing the paper according to the submission guidelines, right? So once you've identified the journal, check it out for the type of journal it is. Meaning, what kind of papers does it publish? Does the topic you have in mind fit into the ambit of the journal? Also, is it within the scope of the journal? Is the topic represented in the journal frequently or only rarely? Suppose you want to send in a paper on a topic in every past issue of the journal, then you may be in trouble. So make sure that you understand what kind of topics will work with the journal. Also, what is the size of the journal's audience? What type of people read the paper? Because these questions will help you write an effective paper. As I told you earlier, be conscious of your reader. Also, be aware of the rejection. Suppose it has a very high rejection rate. This means you will have to work doubly hard in order to be accepted. Also, check out what kind of format is acceptable to the journals you've narrowed down. Do they use the MLA style, or the APA style, or the Chicago style, or they have their own style sheet? Make sure you follow that. Also, check the dates at the bottom papers. Suppose you have an important interview coming up and you need a publication quickly, but you are submitting to a journal that takes 2 years to publish. So how much is the editing phase? How much is the production phase? Make sure you know all the details. And friends, remember, there are lots of predatory journals around that take a lot of money from you and still don't deliver. So make sure you identify the journal you are going to is reliable and dependable. Also, you've got to check out the quality of photographs. Suppose you've got photographs or graphs and tables that you want to publish along with the article. You'll have to check what quality do they ask for, and accordingly you will need to deliver. Next slide, please. There is some lexical priming. Lexical priming means that when you are reading a piece of writing, sometimes your mind automatically checks the errors, and they don't register as errors because your mind, your cognition has read. This is called lexical and morphological priming. The mind is primed to read the correct version, which is why you can read this slide, although the words are jumbled up, but sense of it, which is why it's important to get every academic document checked by somebody else, not just you. You are used to that you are reading. So with this, I'll stop speaking and I'll request all of you to come up with any questions that you have. You are welcome. And if you feel shy, I'm going to write my email in the chat box and you can contact me on email. Shahila ma'am, over to you.
Please feel free to ask questions.
Yeah, I put my email in the chat box. In case contact me, you are all welcome. Sometimes, it takes time to distill ideas and then they crystallize in the mind. And then you start thinking, oh, I had to ask this. So I'm open. You can send me an email and I'll be. Shaila ma'am, I think for the future lectures, I'll send you my presentation.
Right, ma'am. I think that would be a better idea.
Yeah, because I noticed that the slides were vanishing. So perhaps there is a network problem somewhere.
Possibly, ma'am.
Please go ahead, friends. You're welcome. Remember, academic writing is nothing to be afraid of. That would be the baseline of my lecture. Master it. It's not difficult to master at all. All you need is somebody who would be happy to give you feedback, and you need them to do it. It's as easy as cake. Yeah.
Ma'am, one of the frequent questions that our students ask is related to, essentially it's related to language proficiency, but they feel that since they feel that they may not be that proficient, so they may not end up writing well. So do you have any suggestions regarding that?
You see, there are two things here. The first is, at any given time, I am always vetting and editing an academic paper. And believe me, these are often written by teachers and researchers with years of experience. I've lost count of the number of papers I've edited for senior doctors from the PGI. So, the first thing that our children need to understand is that develop, and if you haven't developed it so far, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You don't have to feel ashamed. We are multilinguals, and sometimes we may not be fluent in the two or three languages that we use, in all two or three. The second aspect is that whatever you do with language is just the tip of the iceberg. Academic writing is just the iceberg of language proficiency. Language proficiency is developed through lots of language use. If you are learning to ride a bicycle, you will obviously not start driving a car to become proficient in cycling. You'll have to ride a bicycle. So, similarly, listening, speaking, reading, writing, the four skills of language need regular practice. If exposure in your daily environment, you can practice it online. In today's world, you don't need to run after people to sit down with you and teach you English. You just register on any website that gives enough practice in listening, speaking, reading. And that's it. Pick up an app, work with the app, do 15 to 20 minutes of language exercises daily in writing. The other
This wonderful series of lectures, and especially I am thankful to you for inviting a luminary of the field. Professor Deepti Gupta is such a towering genius of the field, and she is delivering these lectures. We are really very much thankful. And the topics that you have selected are very much important, because as for academic writing, at different stages of their career, students are supposed to write something, essay writing or research paper or dissertation or thesis. But by and large, what I have felt is that they face a lot of problems in giving good expression. Sometimes there are syntactical errors or grammatical errors, or there are certain problems in their formatting. And in this lecture, Professor Deepti Gupta has suggested how to overcome all these problems. And she has suggested these things in very simple way, very clear, as she suggested right at the beginning of the lecture. Even if it is WhatsApp texting, there should be a system, there should be a proper system procedure. And then definitely there is some difference between general writing, which is supposed to be emotional, and academic writing, which is supposed to be thoroughly logical. That is the difference. And another thing that is very, very important, as you suggested, that the first draft of your write-up should be very much simple as you speak, and later on you are supposed to refine it, improve it. Yes, that is the beginning of good writing. It should be very much simple. Somewhere, David Crystal, one of the prominent linguists of our age, he says, if you wish to get noticed, then you should have the capability to say the ordinary things in extraordinary way. But here, the gist of Professor Deepti Gupta's lecture is that in the sphere of academic writing, if you wish to get noticed, then you should have the capability to say extraordinary things in ordinary way. Perhaps this is the essence of a good academic writing. It should be very much clear, and especially she gave some warning in the context of plagiarism, a serious problem in the space of academic writing. Yes, majority of the participants in this webinar are researchers or students. Yes, you should be attentive to this issue. And finally, once again, I'm very much thankful to Professor Deepti Gupta ji. Besides Professor Deepti Gupta, I'm very much thankful to Professor Amandeep ji, head of the Computer Science Department of our university, because he always extends a very helping hand in organizing these events and providing technical support. And along with Professor Amandeep ji, Mrs. Usha Sharma, she is also from